The Southeast region may soon get its sixth state as the House of Representatives has passed for second reading a bill for the creation of Olu State. According to the draft bill, Olu State will be carved out of Imo, Abia and Anambra states, with Olu as its capital city. Now, the proposed Olu State will have 28 local governments drawn from the three states.
And 42 other constitutional amendment bills have sailed second reading in the House of Representatives. One of them seeks to strip the vice president, governors, and their deputies of the immunity that shields them from prosecution while in office. Proponents argued that this move will curb impunity, deter corruption, and ensure that public officials remain accountable for their actions. Another landmark bill proposes the separation of the offices of Attorney General from those of the Minister and Commissioners of Justice, with the aim to insulate the office of the Attorney General from political influence. One other bill is to grant citizenship rights to foreign spouses of Nigerian women.
Right, a number of issues to unpack tonight. With us in the studio is Arise Politics editor and director of news, Sumner Sambo, and at our Overflow studio is Arise analyst and director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, Dr. Sam Amadi. Thank you, both of you, for joining us on News Night tonight. Sumner, let me start with you. I mean, there's so much to unpack. Let's start with the South-West and South-South Development Commission that's been signed into law. So officially, Nigeria now has 6 development commissions. Is this restructuring? Is this regionalism by another name? Some would say through the back door. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? And will it bring about balanced and inclusive growth?
Well, just to add that we actually have 8 development commissions at
the
the
NDDC.
moment. Because the NDDC is there.
Yeah.
And we also have Hyperdeck,
right,
which covers much of the North Central. I mean, 3 regions where you have about 12 states that they cater for. Well, it's a very positive development politically, but in terms of development, it's left to be seen if regional commissions have actually had much impact, because with the latest additions, they have become more political creation than, instruments. Because, I mean, if you are to address the creation, you will think of the impact, not, the intent by the presidency and all of that. Because if you go to when we first started with the idea of creating regional commissions, the very first one was not by the Nigerian government. It was done by the outgoing British colonial government when in 1961, they had already set the template in place before they left in 1960. And by 1961, there was the Niger Delta Development Board, which was set up in 1961. And of course, eventually, that board ran until 1993, when we had the OMPADEC, the Oil Minerals Producing Areas Development Commission. And of course, NDDB then had to go away because of corruption issues. Now, we brought OMPADEC in 1993, and then by 1999, it was already filled up with corruption issues, and we shifted it aside, and we brought NDDC in 2000. Now, between 2000 and now, we've seen that NDDC has been, having a lot of challenges in terms of corruption issues. The federal government has not properly been funding, but though the funding mechanism has, been coming more from oil companies that have been taxed and all of that. And NDDC has received about 6 trillion naira since it was set up. Now, can you, your own, as Nigerians, can many people say that NDDC has made good use of 6 trillion naira when we have several abandoned projects? Well, just taking a look at what the idea of setting up the regional commissions for, it's actually very good, and the federal government has gone ahead to carve out a ministry to guide them. Yeah. And then, of course, the National Assembly has also amended the constitution, the laws setting up these regional commissions to be in line with the Consolidated Revenue Fund, making them to be set to work properly. And it's part of what some of these people in government now who call themselves progressives had been thinking about. Because I interviewed the former governor of Ekiti State, Kaide Fayemi, sometime around 2014 when they were setting up the All Progressives Congress. And he had told me that then, I mean, as a journalist, that when they get into government, that they were going to set up regional agencies for the 6 geopolitical zones, and they will hand them 50 billion each to support. But this is also a way for the federal government to have, you know, territory and support and structures outside the federal capital territory, which is the only place that the federal government can have control. Now, with regional commissions, if there are environmental disasters, problems here and there, the federal government could actually have an impact through this when the states try to politicize issues. Right. So on the face value of it, looks very good, and it's also an avenue for political appointments, but in terms of value addition, well, it's left to be seen.
Well, let's see if Dr. Sam Amadi has the answer to that, to the many questions you've raised. Thank you so much for joining us on the news tonight.
Thank you.
Is it the answer to the age-long call for restructuring? And are development commissions truly agents of change, or they are just political tools? When you look at their broad mandate, including what Sumner has just highlighted, ecological matters, infrastructure, security, you wonder what is left for the federal, state, and local governments to do.
Good question, good question. Again, what they become is what to make of them. Okay, let's pause and step back. Building from Sumner's analysis, there are 2 types and waves of the development commission in this country. The first was what came out of Willis Commission report of 1958 that talked about special intervention for Nile Delta, and that created the board it talked about in 1961. But the second wave, and the real one that had economic potential, was what happened with regional governments, with the Northern Development Commission, the Eastern Development Commission, and of course, Eastern Nigeria Development Commission, of course, the Western Nigeria Development Commission. Now, these commissions borrowed from the example in East Asia then, and what made Obara's was very spectacular. And by the way, Obara borrowed a lot or adapted from the Southwest. For example, in terms of agriculture, farm settlements in the Southwest, Obara brought in farm settlement and extended farming, and then created a huge agricultural revolution, and also industrial. We talk about Trans-Amadi layout today. We talk about, we go to Obudu Cattle Ranch. Obara thought around creating clusters of industrial clusters, MNA Port Harcourt. You talk about Obudu Cattle, Obubura and Cross River, the paper industry. You go back to Port Harcourt, on its Emporium, fashioned after similar ones in Berlin and across the world. Now, this is the point. Those times, if you look at the Northern Nigeria Commission, it created the Northern Nigeria Commission House, which is the Granite to Develop Infrastructure, Southwest, same thing. The notion here of Economic Development Commission is to deal with what economists call externalities and spillovers and missing markets. So I think it makes it. I was initially kind of didn't favor it because I said this is political. Secondly, it lacks the legislative framework which the regional government provided. So the Eastern Nigeria Development Commission, made up of the bright and the brightest from Northwestern, from Stanford, from Harvard, they developed the protocol and the model of economic development in the Southeast that made it the fastest growing economy. We may not replicate those framework anymore. We are now 36 states. But what these commissions can do is to build around how do you create, for example, Southeast now. It should be a common market. You may not fuse together their political entities, but you can now create spillovers and link markets. Infrastructure, for example, electricity issues, transmission distribution, is not good for small states. It can be scaled around region. So if you do that, then you're doing what the Asians did. Look at the example of China. China didn't call their own regional commission, but China created a process in which the coastal states first became the extra port for exportation. They grew rich first. The hinterland were poorer. Later, manufacturing went to hinterland. So that idea of dividing the country into different economic advantages and processes and stages of takeoff is important. So I think that this could be a golden moment for us. If first we think around it, not about politics and the bureaucracy and the jobs we're going to create for election. That's the problem. Politics always get in the way of things. But if you think around it as, look, these regions can actually create greater economy if they are integrated, not in a legislative, legal sense, but together in an economic sense in which the different states can be helped to have prototype of regulations. For example, if you look at Europe, how Europe created an European market is because European countries subscribe to a standardization in terms of competition law, in terms of various laws. So if you take a particular region, let's say Southwest, let's say North Central, and you standardize these regulations, you're reducing cost of business. So somebody can operate from Abuja, or operate from Nasarawa, operate from Benue, because their laws are similar. The same with Southeast. So rail will be common services. Each state will now plug and play. So I think it's a real opportunity. But you need to reconceive it away from intervention, the type of Nile Delta, to a way of dealing with what we call, economists call coordination failure, spillovers, missing markets, and more balanced economic growth. That's the potential I see.
Sumner Sambo, let me bring you back in. Is this an indictment on governance at the subnational levels, that they have failed over the years in delivering good governance? Now tie that with the bill that's passed second reading for the creation of Olu State in the Southeast. That will make it 6 states in the Southeast.
Well, it's an indictment on the sort of federal system that we run, because look, what do we have the ministries, departments, and agencies of the federal government for? Most of the functions that are going to be performed by the regional commissions are actually the functions of the ministries, departments, and agencies of government. So, you see, there's actually a failure in our system to be able to make institutions work. And when that failure shows up, what we do is to create more institutions to actually drive or want to cure that problem. Look, for example, now the states, some of the states are already working towards this. Like the Southwest states, they have the development agenda for Western Nigeria, a blueprint, and they've had a commission that works that out. So how is that Dawn Commission going to work with the Southwest, Development Commission, for example? When is there going to be a meeting point? And then in terms of finances, the federal government is majorly financing this with some of the companies and, of course, institutions around there. I would suggest that to make these institutions more proactive and more strengthened, I would want the federal government to create a template than what we have now, where the federal government funds the development commissions by 60% and the states fund them by 40%. That's when you can see something tangible coming out of these commissions. Because if you go by the appointments that are already being made right now, you see people are rushing to get appointed. Politicians, that of the Northwest Development Commission, for example, that of senators, former regional leaders and all of that, having their wives, their children and all of that being sent there. And now this will not bring out the best of these institutions. Go to the states themselves. The states have failed. Now, these regional development commissions are supposed to be an aerial view above the states as to how to coordinate more development, provide and network regions to be able to, have contiguous advantages. And then, of course, you work in such a way that, okay, you work on the areas of your strength. Like, for example, the issues of tourism and Cross River. You bring tourism, and then you bring the strength of, for example, River State in oil, and then you bring the strength of Edo State in monuments. By the time you bring that, yes, and all of that, and then it brings something better out of it. But when the funding is coming only from government at the federal level, what the people who are coming into this regional development commission will be thinking is exploiting those resources. And of course, that's why people are saying that this is restructuring through the back door.
Olu State, very quickly, I address that before we go back to
Amadi. Of course.
How desirable?
Well, a lot of people want more states. But the states, if the current states that we have right now are not viable, politically it sounds good to have another Olu, to have a state for the Southeast. But in terms of where we're heading to, in terms of economic advantages and all of that, having more states will not solve our problems. Let's be very frank. It won't solve those problems. But politically, it sounds good, just like the regional development commissions. And I continue to ask yourself very quickly, why does the Northwest have 7 states and others have maybe 5 and others have 6? Does the Northwest Is the Northwest better today than other geopolitical zones by having 7 states?
So should we just create more states to solve the problem? But Sam Amadi, very quickly, let's talk about something else that came up. If we remove immunity from the vice presidents, the governors, and the deputies, will this curb corruption in any way? Are there any political implications for this?
It will help in curbing corruption to the extent that anybody in office will be conscious that they are criminally liable, not post-office, but while in office. But again, the political cost could be, the idea of this immunity, original from the 1999 Constitution and 1980 Constitutional Drafting Committee, was to create a sense in which you don't distract state governments, state governors, and everybody, president, from frivolous suits while they are managing the state. But the Supreme Court has said that prosecution, that immunity does not include immunity from investigation. So nothing stops the EFCC and the police to thoroughly investigate somebody in power today and wait and then fight. What we've seen is that when they leave, they now start petitions and now start, they have no investigation, they don't do the investigation. So I don't know how much it will help, because they're going to also rely on an effective prosecutorial agency, effective investigation agency, and security agencies removed from political control. So yes, it helps that everybody feels, look, they can be liable. You can be sued, not just also from suing you, prosecuting you while being a governor, deputy governor, or vice president. But the reverse side is that we might see, except we develop, the courts themselves develop very strong control. The problem with Nigerian judiciary is that the judges cede control to lawyers. So lawyers will bring clearly frivolous suit. A judge will entertain it. At the end of the day, he says it's frivolous. So get it out. But in the U.S., elsewhere, you see that judges are more in charge. They will non-suit you straight away. So this case is useless. Throw it away. So if we have a control, the judges play a gatekeeper role, then it won't have too much adverse effect. But today, if we control the way it is, you're going to see frivolous suits here and there, then it will be weaponized as an instrument to get some governors who probably are not in good terms with the presidency out of the way. But otherwise, I think that only the president should have limited immunity that covers the work he's doing as president, but does not cover private action. And even if you don't prosecute them, you can investigate them and keep the records for prosecution.
Sumner Sambo, do you agree in 30 seconds?
Yeah, I mean,
or is it dead on arrival?
Very well agreeable, and it will really help to position people who want to get into power, because a lot of people just want to get into power to use it as a cover. But once this immunity is actually removed, you know that it's serious business, and you don't pilfer public funds. I mean, that's what we don't actually, tend to romanticize it. People get into power, pilfer public funds, and maybe still like 10 billion or 20 billion and use like 5 or 10 out of that 20 to fight the legal process and all of that. And at the end of the day, communities are busy, making you feel better and happy. But now when you know that you are liable, and even while you are there, something could go wrong, you could be removed for stealing public funds and all of that, it makes it better, and the people will be the greatest beneficiary. And these are some of the reforms that, are very much needed. Like the regional issues we talked about, it's been in the offing. In 1995, during the political conference, you saw that we brought in 6 geopolitical zones. Now we are bringing in 6 regional development commissions. It's a work in progress. Federalism is a work in progress, and that's why we must commend President Tinubu, but we must make sure these institutions work and they don't serve as instruments of failures, like we've seen with the ministries, departments, and agencies of government at the federal level, and even state governments. Once they get into power and the federal government comes to work, they will leave everything to the federal government, while the institutions of state at the state level are failing. Why? Yeah,
well, good question, gentlemen. A lot to cover. I mean, there are those who have raised questions about conduit pipe for corruption for the regional development agencies, and of course the spouses of Nigerian women getting citizenship. That's another one.
Very lovely one.
But there's a lot we could have spoken about.
Very lovely one.
But we thank you for your insights tonight on the news. Sumner Sambo, Director of News, as well as Dr. Sam Amadi, our news analyst.